Hi, I'm Heather Marie Montilla, and you are watching PBS Books. Welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening. We are so excited to be here. PBS Books, in collaboration with Georgia Public Broadcasting and Middle Georgia Regional Library, is pleased to host a conversation with Pulitzer Prize-winning Geraldine Brooks in celebration of the 2022 Library of Congress National Book Festival. PBS Books is proud to partner with the Library of Congress in presenting and promoting the 2022 National Book Festival. Let's take a moment to hear from the Librarian of Congress, Dr. Carla Hayden.
Books bring us together as the Library of Congress National Book Festival returns in person on September 3rd at the Washington Convention Center. The festival is free for readers of all ages. We will also be live streaming 3 stages for audiences across the country. Featured authors this year include Janelle Monáe, Leslie Jordan, Niall DeMarco, Nick Offerman, Angie Thomas, and more. So go to loc.gov/bookfest for more.
Thank you. Well, if you are able to travel, I would say going to the Library of Congress National Book Festival is one of the most amazing opportunities. It is on September 3rd from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. It is free and open to everyone. Typically, hundreds of thousands of people join to get to hear and listen to their favorite author and meet their next favorite author. The complete schedule for the 2022 Library of Congress National Book Festival can be found at loc.gov/bookfest. But if you can't be there, don't worry. As Dr. Hayden shared, you can stream it and you can curate your own experience from the comfort of your home. Well, now through August 31st, PBS Books and PBS stations across the country will host a series of 10 virtual events with 11 authors. This is our 4th event. They are also available on demand after they happened on PBS Books and the National Book Festival website at loc.gov/bookfest. So today's conversation, we focus on Geraldine Brooks to discuss her latest novel, Horse, a novel. It's based on the remarkable true story of the record-breaking thoroughbred Lexington. Horse is a novel of art and science, love and obsession, and our unfinished reckoning with racism. We are so thrilled to be able to focus on Geraldine and speak with her and learn more about her work and her process. But before we get started, one of the things we always must do is to thank our library partners across the country, more than 1,800 strong, as well as numerous PBS stations throughout the nation. But we would like to thank all of you for being here. Okay, so here we go. Geraldine Brooks is Australian born. She grew up in Sydney. She was awarded the Pulitzer Prize in Fiction in 2006 for her second novel, March. Her novels, Caleb's Crossing and People of the Book, were New York Times bestsellers. Brooks worked as a reporter for the Sydney Morning Herald and the Wall Street Journal, where she covered crises in the Middle East, Africa, and the Balkans. Her first novel, Year of Wonders, is an international bestseller translated into more than 25 languages and currently under option to the actor Olivia Colman. Brooks's latest work, Horse, a novel, is featured at the 2022 Library of Congress National Book Festival. Welcome, Geraldine.
It is so wonderful to be with you.
We're so happy to have you and to moderate today's conversation. We are so fortunate to be able to have Rebecca Scarborough. Rebecca Scarborough is the adult literacy librarian for the Middle Georgia Regional Library System, headquartered in Macon, Georgia. She graduated from Emerson College with a degree in writing, literature, and publishing in 2019, and she is now working on her master's in library science. In the time she has worked with the library system, she has acted as a children's specialist, genealogy research assistant, and reference librarian. You can hear her reading aloud to her cats, Poppins and Parker. It is my pleasure to welcome Rebecca.
Hello, I am so honored to be here.
We're so happy to have you. You know, before we get started, could you share a little bit about your work at the library?
So I am the newly appointed adult literacy librarian for the Bibb County area, which is right in the middle of Macon, Georgia. My main focus is connecting adults who have kind of been neglected in the literacy department to resources that they need to better improve their lives. That directly relates back to Middle Georgia Regional's mission, which is to connect all people to the information they need to improve their lives, whether it be resources or directly working with employees.
Well, I know that when I asked you if you'd be willing to lead this interview, you raved and just had shared how many of Geraldine Brooks's books you had read. And so I was so excited to be able to kind of pair you together. Before I hand it over to you, I just wanted to ask, you're not able, I don't think, to go up to DC for the Library of Congress National Book Festival, but what are your plans on September 3rd?
I am streaming it. I have snacks prepared and a computer on standby, and I am going to be most likely at home all day for the entire 11 hours.
It is going to be so amazing to be able to choose from the 3 different stages. And then for everyone to understand that all the other stages, that content will be available within 2 weeks. So they'll be rolling out that content. So you'll have to visit back to that loc.gov/bookfest website for the following 2 weeks to find more authors, more amazing content. Well, without further ado, enjoy the conversation with Geraldine. I can't wait to hear it.
Thank you. Hi, Miss Geraldine. How are you?
Well, I'm fine, Rebecca.
I am so honored to be here. My background is in book publishing, so this is a special treat for me to kind of return to my career roots. But let's just go ahead and get started.
Wow.
I have already read the book, but I would like you, if you're able, to give us kind of a short synopsis of what the book is and what it means to you.
So Horse is a braided narrative set in 3 time periods, and the historical spine of the novel is inspired by the life of the most extraordinary racehorse of the 19th century, who was Lexington, who was not only the fastest horse ever at that time, but also the greatest stud sire in American racing history, siring more champions than any other thoroughbred. It has a contemporary thread, which is inspired by the science around the horse's skeleton, which was actually in the Smithsonian for more than 100 years, and all the work that osteopreparators do on bones and the work that scientists do to extract information from them. And when I was at the Smithsonian researching that aspect of the novel, I learned that there was going to be yet a 3rd thread that is inspired by an actual oil painting of Lexington taken during his lifetime by an interesting painter named Thomas Scott. And that painting is at the Smithsonian, but it has a very unusual provenance. And exploring how it got there leads to the 3rd strand of the novel, which takes place in New York City, post-World War II, at the rise of abstract expressionism and the other avant-garde art movements that changed our aesthetic ever. So when I set out to write a novel about a racehorse, I didn't know it was going to lead me directly to Jackson Pollock, but it did.
So how long does an idea as complicated as this one have to kind of sit in your mind and marinate before you're able to even construct the narrative to tell yourself, let alone actually write it down?
Well, the dirty secret is that you fall in love with the idea for your next novel when you're falling out of love with the novel you're already writing because you've already realized the difficulties inherent in the one that you're working on. You start every novel with this ridiculous optimism that this book is going to write itself. It is so clear to you at the beginning exactly how it's going to go, and it's just going to be a brilliant exploration of creativity, and the words will fall on the page, and they never do. And it's a bit like the difference between seeing a wonderful person at a party and then they move in and drop their wet towels on the floor. So then you see the next idea and you're absolutely positive that that one is going to be the one that will be the easy book to write, and it never is.
Do you grow attached to characters and then do you kind of go on to miss them, or is it sort of you fall in love, you love the one you with, and then you move on kind of relationship?
It varies, as it does with our human relationships. Some of my characters I still miss, and sometimes I find myself thinking about them and wondering what happened to them after the time span of the novel and making up little bits and pieces about them. And others, it's like, don't let the door hit you on the way out. Because living with them and trying to understand how they saw the world and how they saw themselves. And I think that is the challenge when you're trying to inhabit identities that aren't your own. You have to be able to answer one question above all, which is, what story is that person telling themselves about the things that they do? Because I don't think anyone actually gets up in the morning and looks in the mirror and says, I'm a terrible person, I'm going to immiserate the world today. I think everybody has a story about why they do what they do, even if it's a deluded story, even if it's a lie that they tell themselves. But if you as a novelist can't find that story, then you don't really have access to your character and you can't really write them.
And is there a character that you read when you were kind of a young budding writer that has imprinted on you in the same way, a character that you didn't write?
As a model for what I do in my historical fiction, I often think of the book that showed me what was possible, which was a book called The Persian Boy by Mary Renault, who was an English novelist who wrote about the ancient worlds. And in The Persian Boy, it is told in first person by the enslaved youth who is given to Alexander the Great as his personal servant. And it's during Alexander's years of conquest. And Mary Renault somehow manages to take you to an entirely different time, an entirely different set of morality, values, belief systems. And yet the character is accessible because the human emotions are unchanging and you feel that you really know this boy. And so that to me is what I try to do in my fiction.
And to kind of continue with the interpersonal relationships, do you have a similar bond with horses in real life that reflects in this novel in any way?
Yes, that's why and how I came to write this novel, is because horses, I guess you could say, were my midlife crisis. I had never ridden as a girl, but I became obsessed with horses and horse riding and acquired a horse. Some girls are lucky and they get a pony for their 6th birthday or their 16th birthday. I got a pony for my 60th. And I didn't want to think about anything else. So when I heard about this extraordinary racehorse and what happened to him during the Civil War and the extraordinary characters swirling around him, including the skilled Black horsemen, many of whom were enslaved, but whose expertise was the foundation of this thoroughbred industry that was an absolute obsession in the 19th century. It crossed boundaries of class, of gender, of race. It crossed boundaries of North and South. Everybody loved thoroughbred racing because it was still a very agrarian country at that time, and everybody had a horse or was only one generation removed from having a horse. So that was for me a bit of a gift because I could combine my day-to-day passion with my day job.
Now, how did you balance all three timelines? Did you have to write them separately and then later intertwine them, or was it kind of moving in a more fluid fashion with the story?
It was very fluid and it was very uncertain, and I sort of had to take it on trust. You know, I knew I wanted to tell these three stories. I was not sure until very, very near the end of the novel how I was going to make them intercommunicate. Mm-hmm. And I had to write just trusting that that would become clear to me eventually. And at the end of it, I was hanging by my fingernails thinking, is this going to come? Is it going to come? And then finally, I could see it. And I think that that is, you know, a case of where you just have to put your backside in the chair every day, do the work, do the writing, take it on trust, and hopefully you will get there.
And with your background as a reporter, what themes do you feel like reflect the reality that you've reported on versus the fiction that you've now created?
So I don't think I'd be able to write the novels I write if I hadn't had 10 years as a foreign correspondent for the Wall Street Journal. It was a very intense time in my life where you would go and travel to places in crisis and barge into people's lives at their worst possible moment, really. The moment of greatest drama and where they had the most at stake. And I learned a lot about human nature, and I'm still drawing on that in my fiction. And a lot happens in the novel Horse because of the time period in which Lexington lived. And the war breaks over the peaceful horse farm where he is. He's retired from racing at the time of the Civil War, and he is a remarkably successful stud stallion. Mm-hmm. And onto this peaceful bluegrass farm comes incredible violence and chaos. And so I'm drawing on some of the violence and chaos I witnessed in contemporary conflicts to create that.
So I'm curious, do you ever turn any of your research for fiction into an article for a historical journal, newspaper, or magazine?
Yes, I have done that. And, you know, it's because of my frugal nature. I hate to waste anything. And often you find out very interesting things that just the story doesn't need them. Mm-hmm. And you cannot cram them in there. You know, you have to let the story tell you what you need to know, what you need to write. But at the end of the day, you often have something really fascinating that you came across. And a couple of examples of that. In my novel, March, I based my character very strongly on Bronson Alcott, who is the real father of Louisa May Alcott, the father of the Little Women, who was such an interesting man. So by the end of it, I knew such a lot about Bronson Alcott, and not all of it applied to the character March, because the character March is a much younger man and he has a very different Civil War experience than Bronson Alcott did. But I knew so much about Bronson Alcott that I was then able to write an appreciation of him for the New Yorker. And similarly with People of the Book, I found out inter alia, researching what had happened to the Sarajevo Haggadah during World War II, I found out that the librarian who had risked his life to save the book, he and his wife had also risked their lives to save a young Jewish girl. And so I told the incredible story of that rescue and how the debt was repaid in the most unlikely way a generation later, when, because of what he had done during the Second World War, his daughter and her family were saved during the war in Kosovo.
Is there a firsthand experience that you have with libraries that has imprinted on you in a positive way when you were growing up or even as an adult novelist?
Libraries were everything to me when I was growing up. My family, my sister and I and my parents would take the bus to the local library every Saturday. And we'd all come back with our own stack of books. Mm-hmm. And it was the most exciting thing in the world to me. And then when my little primary school got a library, it was just, I went in there and I would run my hand over the plastic covered spines of the books. And it was just absolute heaven for me. And I still get a thrill if I walk into the stacks of Widener Library at Harvard. There's a kind of a biscuity smell to the stacks, the old paper.
Mhm.
And I love the serendipitous encounters that you can have in the stacks where you find the thing that you didn't even know you were looking for.
Yes, exactly. Will this be your first time attending the Library of Congress National Book Festival?
No, I am very fortunate in that I've been invited to present about my work several times. And I love everything about the National Book Festival. I started going when it was still held outdoors on the Mall. And I did love that, although it could be incredibly hot or it could be raining. So it was always a bit iffy. And now they've moved it indoors, which is probably saves a lot of high blood pressure for the organizers. But the audiences are so enthusiastic, and it's a wonderful opportunity to meet writers from all over the country. And you know, the great joy for the writers who participate is there's a beautiful reception the night before in the Library of Congress, which is one of our great buildings and a great treasure and a wonderful place to be.
So for those who are going to be stumbling across this new book for the first time at whether it be the festival or listening to this broadcast, what do you want them to take away from when they read it?
I would never be so arrogant as to tell a reader what to take away, because honestly, I think that is the magic of reading. It's a different book for every reader.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a different book. When I read a book and then I reread it a decade later, it's a different book for me. And I take out of it the thing I need to find at that moment. So all I am grateful for as a writer is that somebody reads
it. And it's very interesting, actually, because when I was growing up, my book for that was Little Women. And in a way now it has become March is what I revisit as well as Little Women. So
that's wonderful.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Scarborough. You are watching PBS Books. I am here with author Geraldine Brooks in honor of the annual Library of Congress National Book Festival. Let's get back to the conversation.
You know, you mentioned the relationship with Little Women, and that was a book my mother gave me when I was about 10. And she said, read this. It's got great girl characters in it. You'll like them, but take it with a grain of salt, because nobody on earth is such a goody-goody as that mommy. And I thought that was a wonderful insight coming from my mother. And it is true, because when I was researching Louisa May's own family, her mother was a pistol. She was not the woman who folded her lips and left the room. She had a lot to say, and she had a lot to say it about too, because for all Bronson Alcott's incredibly progressive views, I think he was a very difficult dude in some ways to live with. He's always insisting on starched and iron shirts, which, if you know anything about how you ironed a shirt in those days, that was a lot of work.
I remember visiting their home and realizing that she would let them draw on the wall.
Oh, both of them. These parents were incredible progressives in all kinds of ways. They are a pair who would be considered progressive even today.
Yes.
The mother actually founded the profession of social work, helping poor Irish immigrant women, which is something that didn't exist as a job in those days. And Bronson was not only a radical educator running a school that would still be considered a progressive school, and he was also an animal rights activist of an extreme persuasion, where he thought that wool was the rightful property of the sheep. And, you know, so we shouldn't wear woolen clothing. And since he also didn't want to wear cotton because it was a product of enslavement, their choices of garments was quite limited. But and he was their home was a station on the Underground Railroad. And when John Brown was hanged, one of his daughters came to live in Louisa May's family for a bit of a respite and refuge from the controversy that was swirling around their family. So it was an extraordinary family. And Louisa May didn't even have that much regard for Little Women. I was astonished to read that.
Yes.
She said, my publisher wants a book for girls. I've never liked girls much.
Mm-hmm. And I remember my mother, she handed this to me and she says, because my father was a Civil War reenactor, and she said, you know, he may not like that you're reading a book about Yankees, but this book is going to show you there's more than one way to be a girl. And I have just never forgotten that interaction with her. And it was very similar where, and then I found March as an adult, and I said, well, this is more than one way to be a man. And I was just so grateful to have both of them.
Well, that is wonderful. And it's great to return to that period in Horse as well, because coming back to it, I didn't have to do quite as much heavy lifting to get the feel for the diction of the period and the preoccupations of the period. But Kentucky's history during the Civil War is very interesting because the state was very divided in its loyalties. And so one of my characters, the painter Thomas Scott, enlists with the Union and becomes a medic. And so his reflections on what he sees during the Civil War are part of the story as well. And as is the role of irregulars, the people who were outside either army, and the notorious bandit and murderer Quantrell actually crisscrosses with Lexington in a very dramatic way. And the James brothers, Jesse and his brother, also turn up. So there are so many interesting aspects to the story.
Well, now, as someone who is Australian born and in a way is on the outside looking in at this part of American history, do you feel like you're better equipped to have a almost unobstructed view when you're writing for this time period?
I don't know about that, but I do think that maybe it makes it easier for people on both sides of the divide to read what I say, because I'm not a Yankee and I'm not from Dixie. And so therefore, yeah, I am coming at it with an outsider's eye. And so perhaps that is helpful.
Now, I know you probably get asked this a lot. Do you have anything in the works at this point? Something new that you've fallen in love with since Horse?
I do. I am doing a couple of shorter nonfiction projects, but then I have in my sights another big historical novel, and I can't say too much about it at this point because it's a long way off, but it's a novel inspired by a piece of furniture. So
I'm just going to contain my excitement. And is there anything else that kind of led you to have this novel published at this moment, or did it just feel very serendipitous to you?
Well, it was not so much the publication, but the writing of it. It was a strange time because I think we are in another period of great division in this country as existed right before the Civil War. And the country seems to be pulling apart into these silos, tragically. And so I'm writing a novel about a similar period of coming apart. And I started writing this book in 2016, and we all know what happened in 2016. So the noise was very, very loud in my ears of the contentious nature of our current debate and the way we are seeing things through completely different sets of ideas, ideologies, and we even, can't seem to hear the truth the same way anymore, and that is very sad. So it was hard in a way to write with that background, but I do think it made it into a different book because I was writing the contemporary strand of the novel, which was meant to be just about science and art and things going on at the Smithsonian. But I realized that given how fundamental the story of race and injustice was in the historical section of the novel, I could not leave it in the 19th century as if this was a story that was over and done with. I knew I would have to address the way it continues to echo and resonate in contemporary life. And so the contemporary section of the novel has that theme to it as well.
Are any of your own perspectives or beliefs or just perceptions of the world, have they been changed through researching this book, or do they feel even more cemented?
I think, I learned a lot more about the institution of enslavement. I think we tend to be monolithic in our view of that. We think about enslavement and we think about plantations and field work and maybe house servants, but there are so many layers to this, and to get to know something about these incredibly skilled Black horsemen who were the trainers, the grooms, and the jockeys, and who, as a result of their high level of skill and the importance of it to the thoroughbred owners, the white owners treated them with a good deference. And so they had a unique status within this brutal system. They had some things that they could do that other enslaved people were banned from doing, like traveling across state lines and holding property in their own right. This was not available to most enslaved people. And it led to many of the horsemen being eventually able to buy their own freedom. And then that's a whole other status within the system. But the complexity of it all, the novel moves from Kentucky to Natchez, Mississippi, to New Orleans, and the different ways of being Black in all those places, and the different sets of rules, and the different ways life was precarious, and the different ways you could be ripped out of your profession or away from your family. So it was a lot of research and a journey to understanding for me. But I thought of something that the wonderful Nigerian-American novelist Marlon James once wrote, which was he said he was fed up with narratives of enslavement that were only about brutality and immiseration. And he said he didn't want to read another account of enslavement that didn't also recognize resilience and expertise and knowledge. And yes, even within the brutality of this system, love and joy existed.
Do you feel one of the themes that kind of presents itself within the story is that humanity, whether it's even the horses, humanity is treated as disposable by certain groups?
Yes, no, absolutely. So the novel is very concerned with the human bond with animals, and particularly, so we have you read to your cats. I have a very beloved dog, but the relationship that we have as two predator species, it's a much easier species divide to overcome, I think, because we're both looking at the world with our eyes straight ahead, looking for where our next meal is. Whereas horses are a prey species, and they're looking all around them for what's coming to eat them. Mm-hmm. And so to form a bond across the predator-prey barrier is an even greater achievement. And if you can establish trust and, yes, love, then it comes out of patience and empathy. And that's why I think horses are so valuable. And I think that we don't respect them enough. And I think horse racing particularly treats them as disposable. And if they haven't made it by the time they're 5, their fate is often quite tragic. Whereas my horse's paddock mate is an off-the-track racehorse who is 33 years old and still has so much to give, because we learn so much from each other in terms of what you have to do to establish trust, and how you have to be focused, and how you have to be patient. And my pony and I work in an equine therapy program with kids with various disabilities, including autism. And it's magical to see the bonds with those horses and the kids.
Well, at this point, I think I'm going to have to invite Heather back in. I've taken a lot of your time, but I have really, really enjoyed talking with you.
Love talking with you, Rebecca.
This has been an incredible conversation. And one of the words I was writing down, well, I wrote furniture as I looked behind you, Geraldine, and tried to spot something. Is it a chair? Is it that gorgeous table behind you? Like, just trying to maybe find the glimpse of what it could be. I also wrote down magical, because I really feel like this conversation was magical. I mean, Geraldine, you have such wit and humor, and that does come through in your writing, but you were just such a pleasure to hear. I mean, you are addressing and investigating some very difficult, you know, not always the pretty parts of the United States are written into your work. But the joy too, that is able to I think this has been lovely. So thank you. And Rebecca, thank you for guiding the conversation and for asking such thought-provoking questions. Before I close the program, though, so I know, Geraldine, you shared you've been to the National Book Festival before. Can you share what can we expect from you this year at the festival?
I will go a little bit more deeply into the inspirations for the novel and the incredible adventures I had researching the novel. And I love to engage with the audience as well, and talk to people either from the stage or in the signing line, wherever it's possible to do that, and find out what's on your mind and what you would like to ask me. So I'm looking forward to that.
And do you also, when you go, have time to go to any of the other programs?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. I go to as much as I can, and I learn a lot, and I laugh a lot, and I have a great.
You know, it's funny. I once interviewed an author who said that she got her idea for her next book by going to the Library of Congress National Book Festival. And so I was like, oh, I wonder how many authors do that. And she actually had said that she was sitting next to someone and was like, and you'll be my illustrator, right? And that's how they did their next book. I was kind of stunned, but I thought it was a good idea.
Fabulous.
Well, thank you so much. I want to remind everyone to join the Library of Congress National Book Festival on September 3rd. If you're in the DMV area, please go in person. It's between 9 a.m. and 8 p.m. at night. If you're not, you can stream it live. Go to loc.gov/bookfest, and you can plan your schedule and figure out exactly what you're going to see from the three main stages. The other thing to note is, so this is the fourth in the series of 10 PBS Books events that are promoting the 2022 Library of Congress National Book Festival. Monday, we actually will be interviewing Mitch Albom, and that will be at 8 p.m. All of these conversations, all 10, will be archived, but Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of next week, this is where you'll go, and then also the following Monday, Tuesday. So we are all thrilled about the Library of Congress National Book Festival, want to share it with all of you, and want you to share it with your friends. So please don't forget, if you've enjoyed this program, share it with a friend. Tell them about the Library of Congress National Book Festival. I went in 2019, the last time it was live, and I basically was like, how did I never go to this before? It is fantastic. And it's just, if you're a curious person, if you love learning, if you love different types of books, this is the place to go. So don't miss September 3rd in person or streamable. So until Monday, I'm Heather Marie Montilla. From PBS Books, happy reading.